It is truly an honor to be here in front of everyone. Thank you, Lady Pauline, Mayor Glenn, Ms. Delicia, Mr. Paul, for allowing me to be here. Thank you as well to fellow speakers and family and friends, audience members. It is great to be here with you all to talk about mental and physical health. For me, I've served in the service for 20 years. And when I tell you there's been ups and there's been downs, and them downs have been down and them ups have been ups, I really mean it. And I think that this is a good platform for us to be here. And I also am grateful to have organizations such as Oak Street Health to be here, because one of the biggest things that we have to take into account is that we have to deal with it. Right? When we talk about mental health, when we talk about physical health, when we talk about detriments to our lives, things that we have to do is deal with it. And we can't deal with it without organizations such as Oak Street Health and having those counselors and those mental health professionals to be able to help us. So first, I guess I'll just go into a little bit of myself and my story. I am a Queens native by way of the United Kingdom through Jamaica, through St. Kitts. My family kind of, decided to leave the Caribbean and go over to the UK. I came over to Queens when I was about 6 months old. So that's the only thing I know. Grew up on one side of the Van Wyck and then crossed over to the other side of the Van Wyck. So I was over on Suffolk and then went over to Linden, further down Rockaway. So New York is in my heart through and through. So again, this is like great for me to be home, and it's just like an honor. When I came over here, went through PS 160, did the whole, school thing. And about the age of 17, I graduated. I actually did school in the UK, but that's a whole nother story. I graduated and came back and was kind of working at a summer camp and did some administrative duties throughout the year. But I needed something else. I ran track. I was a track professional with my coach and mentor who is no longer with us, but he has taught me a lot. He was also a Vietnam vet. And because of him, in 2003 of March, I joined the Marine Corps. Joining the Marine Corps in 2003, obviously we all know what happened September 11th, 2001. And so it wasn't with the intent for me to go to combat, right? It wasn't with the intent of me, I'm going to Iraq or, it was just to do something else. I needed something different. I was growing up in Queens and, things weren't necessarily on the up and up, especially in the early 90s. And so I just needed something better. Or in 2000, so I needed something better, and so I decided to join the Marine Corps. 2004, I found myself deployed, and I found myself in combat. I was an electrician, and I was powering up a hospital close to Fallujah, and essentially I saw a lot of the aftermath of what came in. I served as an ambulance driver. I served essentially as a medic as well, and let me tell you, it wasn't nice. It wasn't pretty, but it was also life. And it was things that we all go through on the daily basis, not necessarily in combat, but depending on where we're from. I think I did mention and shared the story recently. The day before I joined the Marine Corps, I was sitting outside on my stoop just taking everything in, and an altercation arose and an individual got shot. And so I kind of went back into the house and was just like, I made the right decision. 2 years later, I didn't think that I would find myself in a deployed environment. I didn't think that I would find myself there kind of seeing what I left, right? And so now I'm questioning myself. The one thing that I did not take into consideration is what toll this was taking on me in my mind, and what toll this was taking on me as an individual, and how it would impact my life later on down the line. Shortly after that, 6 years later, we say I found myself in Afghanistan. And now I was doing a different position. I was essentially logistics, and so was on every kind of convoy out to forward operating bases, combat posts, and taking logistical supplies to Marines that were forward. And it was many a night sleeping on top of ISOs, many a nights with, firefights erupting in the near distance, many a nights with, incoming rounds. And again, this is a story of about 7 months, 7, 8 months this happened. And it falls back down to not taking into consideration what this was doing and what kind of toll this was having on myself, right, and my mental health, because in 2003, it was not a thing, especially being of the Caribbean heritage. We don't talk about anything, right? That's why I'm glad that we're here to talk about it, right? Because we don't. And it's not uncommon. It is more common, and it's unfortunate because it is something that we all should be talking about and dealing with. And in 2010, again, it wasn't something that we were talking about. But with the military, suicides began to increase, especially with being at a nation at war. And so thankfully, leadership decided that there was something that they needed to do. And so with that, we have a behavioral health program that has been around. But again, because we don't talk about things, it wasn't really utilized. But now that that was more publicized, that was something that individuals started to do. But if we think about that, whoever wants to be the first, if I say I need a volunteer, let me get somebody to put their hand up. Who's going to put their hand up, right? But yeah, okay, I got one. Okay, I like it, Joshua. I like it. But more often than not, we don't want to put our hands up because we don't want to be the one that's highlighted. We don't want to be the one that's first. And that really deals with the fear of the unknown. And it's that, okay, well, what am I volunteering for? Somebody hasn't told me. I'm not sure. I don't want to be the first. And so that behavioral health program wasn't necessarily frowned upon, but it also wasn't spoken about and pushed, right? And so you didn't want to go and seek mental health services because, oh, that's the Marine, he's getting help. You know, it was a bad thing. And then there was that stigma that you do not want to have on you. And so it wasn't something that was okay. And for me, not only was it not okay in my family and my culture and my heritage, but now it wasn't okay in the military because, come on, I'm from Queens. I'm not soft, not by any means necessary. You know, I'm not. So I'm gonna make it work by any means necessary. I'm gonna make it work. So I could not be seen as soft. My journey as far as recovery didn't begin until about 5 years ago. That's after serving 15 years, after multiple combat deployments, and after just traveling around the world and serving, the military. I realized that I had an issue. I needed to do something to be better as a family man, as a father, as a brother, as a son, as an uncle. I just needed to do better because I was suffering. And I realized that my suffering not only was impacting me and affecting me, but it was affecting everybody else around me. Through just my trauma and what I've seen, I have a dual diagnosis which means I suffer from, or I deal with, because it's not suffering, right? I deal with mental health disorders and also substance use disorders, right? And so oftentimes the two are kind of coexist because we have to deal with them and we can't talk about them. So we turn to what makes us feel better, what mind-altering, mood-altering things can we do, which oftentimes is in the form of drugs and alcohol. And so once I realized for me that it was bigger than myself and that I have children and that I needed to be a better example for them, I stopped caring. And not necessarily caring about my health, but I stopped caring about what the world thought. I stopped caring about how I would be viewed or how I would be labeled. Because one thing that I realized is the world essentially isn't taking care of my family or taking care of me or paying my bills. It is me. And in order for me to do that and be successful, I need to seek some assistance. And so Let's Talk About It is great because that is one of the biggest things that we all need to do more is just to communicate. Because for me, what I've realized is that not only can my story help somebody else, but it also helps me because it's also easing that pain every time that I'm able to talk about the situations that I've been through and talk about my frustrations and why I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, air quotes, because anytime I talk about it, I get on the right side of the bed and I feel so much better. And I also don't know what impact my story has had on one person, But my hope, and anywhere I go, anywhere I speak, any individual that I talk to, I only have one goal in life. And my one goal is for you to learn one thing. Because if you learn that one thing, then you can step into your day as a better individual and be able to maybe wake up that next morning a little bit better, a little bit stronger, and be able to deal a little more. And for me, one thing I did want to kind of make the correlation to was just, I know I spoke about prior to joining the military and what I witnessed, but that trauma that we deal with that leads to mental health isn't necessarily always a physical trauma that occurs to an individual. It can be things that are witnessed. It can be things that are inherently passed down through generations from what we are taught. It can be a cultural thing, but it's deeper than the physical. And I think in talking about it is how you realize, or you come to that realization of how to make yourself better, or how to start that process in healing. And when we talk about starting that process in healing, there are, I think, the 3 A's, but I'm gonna move it to the 4 A's, right? So the first thing for me was the awareness, is I had to be aware that there was an issue. I had to be aware that I needed to seek help. And in order to be aware, and in order to do that, I needed to have organizations such as Oak Street. I needed to have organizations such as Behavioral Health Program with Marine and Family Programs. I needed to have those counselors that was there that were able to give me the training and talk to me about, hey, this is what mental health is. Let's do a deep dive into yourself. And once I was aware, I had to accept that. Oftentimes we are aware of these issues, but we don't accept them, and so we don't necessarily deal with them. We just push through, right? We push through that wall and we keep on, regardless of the impact that it has on you. So once I was aware, I had to make that decision on holding myself accountable, which is that 3rd A. And so that accountability piece comes into it. That accountability of, what do I want to do? What kind of example do I want to be to my brothers, to my sisters, to my cousins, to even my parents, right? Even to those that are older, because, experience essentially and what you've gone through is what makes a person wise. I don't necessarily believe that it's, the years that they have. So you can impact, and I only say that to say that you can impact people that are older, you can impact people that are younger. Just don't be afraid to share that story. And then after that acceptance and that accountability, that 4th A is that action. What do I do? Do I choose now to be aware, to accept, and just be like, you know what? I'm just going to keep on tracking, and my action is to do nothing and just to keep on struggling on a daily basis? Or do I reach out? Do I make that call to the organizations that we have that can help us? Do I get some help about it? And that's what I chose. So thankfully, with me reaching out, I feel like in this point of my life, I am in a much safer place, a better place for myself, a better place for my family. And I'm able to use platforms like this to kind of tell my story, and just to be able to be that mentor, that coach, or that friend that somebody may need in any moment. Number one, again, just want to thank everybody for being here, for listening, and thank you all for having me. And I guess
Thanks
if you
for
have
telling
any
your
questions,
story.
of course, that was like a little, thank you.
So tell us, what are some of the actions you're taking? I've heard of mindfulness, I've heard of meditation,
Woo!
I've heard of some other things. Share with us some of the things that you've used to be able to cope.
Mayor Glenn, that is an absolute amazing question. Let me tell you, mindfulness is a thing. I am a huge believer in coping. I do have coping mechanism behaviors down here, but I am a believer that our mind is more powerful than we believe. And if we if we actually would believe more in ourselves, we can push past that mental, right? That mental toughness is what we refer to it as. But our mental toughness can overcome any kind of physical pain that we are going through. So my kind of daily routine, I got into fitness about 10 years into the military. I joined when I was about 155, and I was like, yeah, I just wasn't working because I got into doing like fighting and stuff with the military and becoming a martial arts instructor trainer. Um, and I was tired to get thrown. I was tired to get thrown around. So I was very, very athletic, very agile, but I wanted a little bit more size. So I kind of got into fitness, and that fitness journey kind of served as a part of that because I incorporated it into my daily routine. I was one of those individuals that was up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym. So now that I'm later in life retired, it's more like 6 o'clock now. So I get to sleep. I get to sleep in a little bit. But I say that to say that before I go to the gym, I start with meditation. I believe in frequencies, so and then the angel numbers. So I'm on right now. I'm on my 1111 kick, and not because of Chris Brown's album, because I just realized that that's what he named it. But yeah, and then 444 for as far as the frequencies. But I start with a meditation, and meditation can take many forms for people. I've spoken, to individuals who have had I don't know how to meditate. Like, what does that look like? And for me, the easiest way to explain it is just starts with you being in a quiet room by yourself. Just taking a moment. And even if I meditated this morning with the TV blazing and things going on, but just took a moment to myself. I took myself out of the mix and I stepped into a separate corner and just had my moment. So meditation is huge for me because it allows me, number one, to calm myself. I also have kind of high blood pressure, and that's just, I don't know if that's the family thing or military thing or always being on edge. But it helps me to be conscious of my body, be conscious of essentially that heart rate, my rhythm, and be able to slow everything down. So mindfulness is definitely huge. I do my meditations, I do fitness, I do, working out. That's another thing that I do. And I think one of the things that I do now that has helped is, some of y'all may not like this, but I read. I definitely read. I read a whole lot. Let me tell you, I was one of those. I'm a visual learner. You show me and I can do it. But I took up Atomic Habits was a book that I read last year that was really great. James Clear is really, really great book because it just helps you in identifying, some of the negative habits that you have, some of the habits that you have that you don't even know that you do. Even more than just the fingernail biting or when we think about habits, there's things that we do on a daily basis where you place the remote every day when you're turning off the TV, like that's habitual, right? So Atomic Habits is definitely good in building and changing and you wanting to change, but reading those self-help books, that has definitely helped me through my journey, and just acknowledging this. And then therapy, obviously doing therapy, because the one thing, if you don't talk about it, it all stays boiled in. And we know what happens to that kettle, right? On when you put it on, it's gonna keep on whistling, water's gonna dry out, and it's not gonna be good news for you. So, so it's good to release. So definitely therapy and talking about it is huge for me.
Amazing. So I, as an author and an
I
educator,
love it.
truly believe in your different methods of healing.
Thank you.
So kudos to you.
Thank you.
So I have a question. You said that 5 years ago you sought out help. Was there a crisis or an incident that happened that led you to make that discovery?
Great question. Was there a crisis or incident that occurred for me to seek help? There were multiple. I mean, okay. Oh man, I get to talk about it for real.
Let's talk about it.
Good question, Mr. Lesia. Thank you. So, the substance that I chose to misuse was alcohol. Obviously, Caribbean nature, not obviously, but Caribbean nature, Ray and nephews is like cousins of mine, so so I used to drink a lot. It was a daily thing for me, and it actually wasn't a daily thing. It was more driven by just circumstance. So if I was having a good day, I could have a good day and be good. But then when I'm in that bad mood, I needed a mood altering kind of substance. And so I kind of leaned on that heavily. But that made me make some real bad decisions. I've put my career and my retirement on the line multiple times. Um, Thankfully, I am 29 days away from successfully completing a 20-year, 9-month, and 20-day contract. So yeah, so I'm definitely counting down 29 days. That if I missed it, 29 days. If you guys didn't get it, 29 days. All right. But yeah, so I bring up alcohol because I was one of those individuals who referred to themselves as a high functioning alcoholic, right? Meaning that I can drink as much as I wanted to drink and still continue to push, right? As we would say, and it wasn't an issue. And then I also was a big believer of things aren't a problem until they're a problem. And so for me, it became a problem. And so I started off with counseling and just say, I need to talk to somebody because hopefully, if you can help me relieve some of this pain and some of this, whatever's going on in here that I don't know, maybe there's less that I have to go and drink later. You know what I mean? So for me, it started there. Obviously, the relationships building with my kids and my spouse was not was yeah it was went down the wrong road completely, and that jeopardized everything there. And so I'm still trying to rebuild relationships right now with my children, based off of just actions that I've taken. And I think for me, that's what has hurt the most. And that was where I was like, yeah, it was all good until it wasn't. And I mean, I'm not even gonna get into to the stories of that because New Yorkers don't cry, so we ain't gonna do that.
I do believe that book that you read, Atomic Habits. We read that. I read that recently as well, and I didn't realize how much of what we do are habitual. And I'm just curious to know, what did you take from that book? What habit did you change?
Oh man, I think for me awareness, because I think all my life, oh, not all my life, but since I've been, trying to better myself, probably for the past 10 years, I've been trying to change habits and I've been trying to adjust, but it just hasn't worked. And so 5 years ago, when I started this journey, um, and I started to actually change habits, that book, number one, for me served as just reinforcement that, hey, you are stepping in the right direction. And then obviously it just added more tools to my toolkit. But for me, it was more awareness because I was aware that there was a problem and I was aware that there are tools out there that can help me change them and that I was going along the right path. And yeah, so I just want to continue with that.
Congrats.
Thank you. I
Doing great.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Jamil,
Yes, Mr. Paul.
pleasure for having you here today. I really enjoy, what you're sharing. I've been in the social service field for many years. I have multiple licenses and certifications in substance abuse and mental health. And apparently, just like you, I'm not a firm believer in the functional addict. Can you talk just a little bit more about that?
Okay, yes, I can. So the functional addict, the high functioning addict of those, it for me was um, still being able to produce and still being able to achieve while while under the influence, right, of whatever substance that it was that you were using. And so it would be mornings of, all right, time to have a pick me upper, right? So you have your little morning drink, and then you go to work. And you go to work and you perform at work. You get accolades. Hey, you're doing a great job. And in your mind, or in my mind anyway, it was, if only you knew, right? But let me just continue to put, because y'all, you don't even know. And just while I'm on that, 9 times out of 10, they know, or somebody can tell that something's off, especially if you're around close people. So my family definitely knew, maybe not just random people that I would bump into throughout the day, but those that I was working closely with could definitely tell because we've had conversations about that afterwards. But while you're going through it, you don't think that anybody knows, and you're doing your checks, All right, I'm good. You're looking at your eyes, you're using the eye drops, and you're like, all right, eyes aren't red, eyes aren't bloodshot. I'm still able to operate. But this is dangerous because there are those individuals that operate, heavy equipment, operate machinery. And I hate to say it, but how do you get to work? We drive to work. And when you have that false mentality that I can function while I'm under the influence, or while my mood or my mind has been altered, it can be detrimental to not only you, not only others. Oftentimes, not oftentimes, but on a few occasions, I've had a couple of accidents. One, I was, air quotes, not drunk. I may have been drinking the night before, but I was good. I fell asleep. And I heard it, but I didn't really process it at the time. But I remember a family member saying, man, glad you didn't kill anybody. And in my mind, I'm like, no, I mean, I fell asleep and I just, but I didn't think of what it could have been. I didn't think of what could have happened until I started to work on myself and until I started to better myself. So that high functioning or that functional addict is that individual that believes that they can achieve even while they are under, a mind altering or mood altering substance. Hopefully that adds to it. All right.
Well, you mentioned something, and I just want to kind of come back to it. You talked about trauma, and you talked about generational, cultural, and maybe even family trauma. What have you noticed or learned about that trauma that's been passed down to you, that's contributing to your trauma that you're dealing with?
That is a good one, Mayor Glenn, and I think my mom may be tuned into this, so I'm gonna tread lightly on this question. I think for me, it's a real thing, right? It's something that, like, we talk in my recovery journey. There are different sides, right? Some people view it as there is no such thing as generational trauma or generational curses. Some people view it as there is. I believe in my culture, a lot of things are passed down, and things that are passed down are generational. I mean, so. So I do believe that there is generational trauma that gets passed down, that is taught, and that is learned just by what you witness. I think what I have learned is the importance of the conversation and the awareness. So that awareness piece I'll add. I brought my my mother in. Actually, it was recently. It was a few months ago on one of my sessions, and that was the first time that I did that. My mother and my sister, actually, and they were glad that I did because it gave them a different perspective. But in my household, we often speak about it when it comes to, like, my mother, just things that were passed down, but we've never really dealt with it. So we've spoken about it, we've talked about it. We do believe that it is a thing, but the first step is obviously dealing with it. As I was speaking about, the awareness, the acceptance, the accountability, and then the action is getting to that action part. So it is, for me, my learning point, and you see, I'm trying to tread very lightly, but my learning point was just being aware and of my right for myself. And the one thing, thank you for saying that. The one thing that I have realized is the only thing that I can control is myself. That's the only thing I can control. So that's the only person that I'm working on. And I just hope that it has that positive impact on everybody around me and everybody that sees.
But as a also coming from a Caribbean household,
Yeah.
and I hear people talk about generational trauma and genetics and things that are passed down. There's a quote that I truly believe: you can change genetics just by changing your habits. So
Right.
keep doing what you're doing. It really is about where you start at with yourself.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. So, if people are looking to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Look, let me tell you. So I told you this journey is new for me. Thank you very much, Megan. So this journey is new for me, right? Well, not. I mean, it's new. The awareness. So I did recently. I kind of like. I rebranded myself several times, but I like deleted everything that I have off of my Instagram, and I'm starting over. However, I still do have my handles, and I will continue to have my handles. So if you search any platform, mainly Instagram is what I use currently. I'm not really on Facebook. But it's at IXL, the letter I, the letter X, the letter L, the number 4, and then the word real, or JISAAC for real.
For real.
Yeah, okay. For real. And so for me, IXL is because I was asked a question a while ago, just to sum up myself in one word, and the only thing I could think of was I excel.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.